I never thought I'd cry at my own funeral, but it wasn't from sadness. It was from seeing the full extent of the rot hidden within my own family. The vultures were already circling, and I hadn't even begun to die. My name is Joseph Anthony Smith. I'm 72 years old. I worked my entire life as a construction foreman in Springfield, Illinois. I started carrying bricks for others and ended up building entire buildings with my crew. I have calloused hands from years of hard work, but I'm proud of every single callus. With these hands, I built not just houses for others, but the roof that sheltered my family for more than 4 decades. Retirement came late, at 67. I managed to save some money, not much but enough to avoid financial strain. I own my home in a nice neighborhood, a modest car, a 2020 model I bought new with much sacrifice, and a modest savings account I built little by little. Everything earned through sweat, through overtime, through weekend jobs, through many cups of black coffee and cold lunches at construction sites. I raised 3 children, Charles, Melissa, and Junior. Junior lives far away in Seattle and rarely visits. Melissa married and moved to Montana with her husband, and Charles stayed right here in Springfield with his wife Patricia and my 2 grandchildren, 18-year-old Peter and 22-year-old Julia. I thought I was lucky to have at least one child nearby to keep me company in my old age. But as the saying goes, all that glitters is not gold. Before continuing this story, I'd like to thank the Grandpa's Voice channel for allowing me to share my story. And I ask you who are watching to subscribe to the channel. Leave a like, comment where you're watching from, and what time it is there. Every day there's a new story here from folks like me who have lived a long time and have plenty of experience to share. Your like is incredibly important for us to continue. What I'm about to tell you now is difficult, but it needs to be said. Because sometimes we think we know people, especially those we raised and gave blood, sweat, and tears to support, but life has surprises that leave us speechless. And it was on a Sunday morning about 6 months ago that I discovered who the people I called family really were. I was born on a small farm in Riverton, a tiny town about 15 miles from Springfield. My father had a small piece of land where he grew a bit of everything: corn, potatoes, beans. Life was hard but honest. I only studied through 4th grade because after that I had to help on the farm. At 16, I got tired of that life with no future and tried my luck in Springfield. I started as a construction laborer, sleeping at the worksite itself, saving every penny. I learned the trade by watching the older masons. From laborer, I became a mason, then a supervisor, and with a lot of effort by my 40s, I was a respected construction foreman. I knew every detail of the job, from foundation to finishing. I had a reputation for being demanding, a perfectionist even. If something's worth doing, it's worth doing right. I always told my workers that the engineers trusted me because they knew that with me there were no shortcuts. Everything was done by the book. My routine was grueling. I woke at 5 a.m., prepared my lunch, took the bus, and only returned after 7 p.m., often covered in dust and cement. On weekends, I did side jobs to supplement my income. I built many house extensions, many walls, many kitchen renovations around town. I had no time to rest, but I had the pleasure of seeing my family have what I never had. I met my late wife, Teresa, at a 4th of July picnic. She worked as a seamstress in a clothing factory. A simple woman, hard-working, from a good family. We dated for 6 months and got married in the neighborhood church. It was a simple ceremony, but beautiful. In the early years, we rented a small room in the back of an elderly lady's house. That's where Charles was born, our firstborn. Then came Melissa, and finally Junior. With 3 small children, life got tighter. Teresa stopped working outside the home to take care of the kids, and the weight of supporting the household fell entirely on my shoulders. That's when I started working overtime, taking every job that came up. There were times when I only slept 4 or 5 hours a night, but I'd look at my children sleeping and think, it's worth it. It's for them. The sacrifices were many. I remember once when Charles, about 10 years old, needed a new school uniform and supplies. It was the beginning of the year. All the bills were overdue. I sold my watch, a gift from my father, to buy what he needed. On another occasion, Melissa got sick with a serious case of pneumonia, and I spent all my savings on medicine and doctors. Many times I skipped lunch so there would be enough food on the table for them, but I never complained. It was my duty as a father. After 15 years of hard work, I managed to save enough for a down payment on a simple house on the outskirts of Springfield. It was small, just 2 bedrooms, but it was ours. We lived there for another 10 years until I managed to sell it and buy a larger one in the Oak Ridge neighborhood, where I live to this day. 3 bedrooms, a large living room, spacious kitchen, a small backyard where I planted some fruit trees. It's a middle-class neighborhood, quiet, with good neighbors. Over the years, I built my assets brick by brick, literally. I renovated and expanded the house myself on weekends. I bought a small plot of land in the Florida Panhandle, thinking about building a small house for my retirement, but I ended up selling it to help Charles start a business that failed. The money never came back, but I never asked for it either. He's my son, I thought. The car came late in life. I was already 65 when I bought my first new car. A simple Chevrolet Malibu, but brand new. I felt incredibly proud to be able to pay cash with money I had saved penny by penny over years. Teresa had already passed away from aggressive cancer. She didn't get to see this achievement, but I'm sure that from above she was happy for me. The problem started appearing after I became a widower. At first, Charles and Patricia would visit every Sunday. They'd bring the grandkids. Julia and Peter were the joy of my life. We'd play dominoes, have barbecues, and I'd tell stories from my construction days. But gradually the visits became less frequent. From every Sunday they went to once a month, then only on special occasions. I began to notice strange looks, whispered conversations. When I'd enter the room, they'd change the subject. Charles would always ask about my medications, if I was taking them correctly. It seemed like concern, but there was something more to it. Patricia started making comments about the size of my house. "It's too big for you, Mr. Smith. It must be a lot of work to clean." And she'd always add, "We're renting such a cramped apartment." I didn't pay much attention at first. I thought it was just in my head, that loneliness was making me suspicious. Until one day, 6 months ago, my grandson Peter came to visit alone. His phone was out of battery, and he asked to charge it in the living room outlet. While waiting, he went to take a shower, and that's when everything changed. That Sunday, while Peter was in the shower, I saw his phone on the charger. The screen lit up with a notification. Normally, I don't snoop through other people's things, but the name of the group caught my attention. Grandpa's Inheritance. I felt a chill in my stomach. I thought to myself, must be some kid's joke. But curiosity got the better of me. I looked at the bathroom door. The shower was still running. I picked up the phone and luckily no password. The group included my son Charles, my daughter-in-law Patricia, my 2 grandchildren, and to my surprise, even my other children were there, Melissa and Junior, whom I barely saw in years. There were 47 unread messages just from that day. I started reading and my heart sank. The most recent conversation was about my health. Charles wrote, "The old man has uncontrolled diabetes. Doctor said the way he takes care of himself, he won't last 2 years. It was true that I had diabetes, but it was controlled. I took my medication diligently. I kept reading." Patricia responded, "The house is easily worth $600,000. Divided by 3 children, that's $200,000 each. Enough for us to buy a nice apartment and get out of renting. My own daughter-in-law planning what to do with my house while I was still alive." My fingers trembled as I scrolled up the screen. Peter, my grandson, who I always thought cared so much about his grandpa, wrote, "Grandpa has about $50,000 saved in the bank. I saw the statement the other day when I went to the ATM with him. So that's why he offered to accompany me to the bank last month. It wasn't concern, it was to spy on my account." And Julia, my granddaughter, whom I helped raise when Patricia went back to work, wrote, "I want his car. It's still new. Barely driven," followed by a laughing emoji, laughing at my death, at my inheritance. Junior from Seattle, who didn't even come to visit, was all excited. "If we sell the house and divide the money, I can make a down payment on a larger apartment." And Melissa responding, "Hope it doesn't take long, I need to renovate my store." I scrolled back further in the conversation. I saw that the group had existed for over 3 months. There were even photos of my house, my car, comments about my medications. In one message, Charles said, "He's getting more forgetful. The other day he left the stove on. Soon he won't be able to live alone." It was a lie. I've never forgotten to turn off the stove in my life. I've always been careful with those things. I sat frozen in my armchair, phone in hand. I heard the shower turn off and quickly returned to the home screen. I put the phone back on the charger. My heart was beating so hard I thought I might have a heart attack right there. Peter came out of the bathroom, grabbed his phone and didn't notice anything. He stayed another half hour with me, but I could barely look at him. When he left, I went to my room and cried like a child. Not from sadness, but from anger, from disappointment. They were bitter tears from someone who discovered they gave their life for people who were just waiting for their death. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept tossing in bed, thinking about everything I'd read. I remembered every sacrifice I made for them, the sleepless nights when Charles was little and had asthma, the money I loaned Melissa to open her store, Junior's college graduation party that I paid for alone, saving for an entire year. And this is how they repaid me. The next day, with a clearer head, I devised a plan. I needed proof of that group. It wasn't enough to have seen it once. I called Peter again. "Grandson, I'm having trouble with my phone. You understand this technology stuff. Can you take a look?" He came over that same afternoon. While he was tinkering with my device, I said I'd make some coffee. In the kitchen, I called my neighbor, Mrs. Cindy, on the landline. When the phone rang, I shouted from the kitchen, "Peter, can you get that for me? It's probably a wrong number." He went to answer it and left his phone on the table. It was my chance. I quickly grabbed his phone and opened the group again. This time I was smarter. I hit the share button and sent all the conversations to my own email. I managed to save about 30 messages. Then I took about 15 screenshots of the most important parts. When he came back, the phone was already back in the same place. "It was Mrs. Cindy, Grandpa. She wanted to know if you're going to church on Sunday." "Oh, tell her I am." "Thank you, son." As soon as he left, I sat down at the computer my son Junior had given me as a gift. Now I understood the reason for his generosity. I printed everything out. I put it in a folder and hid it at the back of my closet. During the following weeks, I made a point of acting normally. When Charles called asking about my health, I'd respond that I was feeling more tired, that the diabetes was giving me trouble. I could hear the barely disguised excitement in his voice. Patricia started showing up more often, always bringing sweets, exactly what a diabetic shouldn't eat. Julia, my granddaughter, came to visit and kept admiring my car in the garage. "Grandpa, you hardly use this car. Ever thought about selling it?" "I have my license now. I could buy it from you." I replied that I was thinking about it and saw her eyes light up. Each visit, each call, each gesture of false concern was like a stab in the heart. People I loved, that I raised, that I gave my all to, just waiting for me to kick the bucket so they could divide what I built with so much sweat. One night, sitting alone on the porch, drinking my black coffee without sugar because of the diabetes, I had an idea. One of those crazy ideas that only comes to someone who has nothing to lose. To teach them a lesson they would never forget. The next day, I went to the notary's office and changed my will. Then, I stopped by the St. Vincent de Paul nursing home right here in Springfield. I spoke with the director, Mrs. Louise, a very attentive lady. I made a donation to them and explained part of my plan. She thought it was strange, but agreed to help me. I returned home and began the preparations. I called Charles on a Tuesday night. I made my voice weak, breathless. "Son, I'm not feeling well. I think I need to go to the hospital." "What is it, Dad?" "What are you feeling?" he asked, and I noticed a tremor in his voice. "My chest hurts badly. I can't breathe properly." "Stay calm, Dad. I'll call an ambulance." "No, just come pick me up quickly." I hung up and smiled. The first part of the plan was underway. I quickly packed some clothes in a small suitcase and separated all the important documents, including the new will and the screenshots of the WhatsApp group. I put everything in a folder. Half an hour later, Charles arrived, out of breath, with Patricia. I was lying on the couch pretending to be feeling ill. "Dad, how are you?" he asked, kneeling beside me. "Not good, son. Very bad," I replied in a weak voice. "Let's take him to the hospital," said Patricia, already grabbing my wallet and documents. "No," I said, holding Charles's hand. "I want you to call your siblings and the kids too. I want to see everyone one last time." I saw the look that Charles and Patricia exchanged, a look that said it all. "Dad, don't talk like that." "Everything will be fine," said Charles, but he was already grabbing his phone to call his siblings. I was taken to St. Luke's Hospital. There I had already arranged everything with a doctor friend, Dr. Marcus, whom I knew from the days when we built the new wing of the hospital. I explained my plan, and although reluctant, he agreed to help as long as I didn't directly involve his name. I stayed in the hospital for 2 days. I asked Dr. Marcus to tell my children that my condition was serious but stable. During this time, I observed how they behaved. Charles and Patricia hardly left the hospital, but they spent more time in the cafeteria than in my room. Melissa arrived from Montana the next day, crying tears that didn't wet her face. Junior came from Seattle complaining about the price of the last-minute ticket. On the evening of the second day, I asked Dr. Marcus to call everyone to my room. When the whole family was gathered, I closed my eyes and made my breathing slow as if I were very weak. "My children," I spoke in an almost vanishing voice, "I don't think I'll last much longer. I want you to organize my funeral, simple like I've always lived. There's a letter in my sock drawer. Read it after I'm gone." I saw the eager looks. Julia had tears in her eyes, but I noticed that she clutched her phone in her hand, probably eager to message the infamous group. "Don't talk like that, Dad," said Melissa, holding my hand, but her eyes were dry. That night I pretended to get worse. Dr. Marcus came into the room several times, made a worried face, increased the IV drip, checked my heartbeat. All part of our act. In the early hours of the morning, when only Charles had stayed at the hospital, the others had gone to rest at my house, probably already rummaging through my things, Dr. Marcus entered the room with a grave expression. "Mr. Charles, I'm sorry, but your father had a cardiac arrest. We did everything possible, but he's gone." My son collapsed into the chair, I don't know if from shock or relief. He cried a little, called his siblings. Soon my room was full again. There were tears, there were hugs, there was mutual consolation. And I, hidden in a room next door, watching everything through a small window, felt my heart tighten, not from illness, but from disappointment. Dr. Marcus explained that because of the hour, the bureaucratic procedures would be done in the morning. He said they could go home and return the next day to take care of everything. The family promptly agreed. They could hardly wait to get their hands on the letter in the sock drawer. Little did they know what awaited them. While my family returned to my house thinking I was dead, I was exiting through the back of the hospital with the help of Dr. Marcus and a trusted nurse. A taxi was already waiting for me, called in advance. I went to the St. Vincent de Paul nursing home, where the director, Mrs. Louise, was waiting for me as arranged. "Mr. Smith, are you sure you want to go through with this?" she asked, concerned. "I am, Mrs. Louise. They need to learn a lesson." I stayed in a reserved room at the nursing home. From there I made some important calls. First to my lawyer, Mr. Paul, who was already aware of everything and had my new will in hand. Then to some old friends from the construction industry, trustworthy men who owed me favors. Meanwhile, at my house the scene was quite different. Through an old friend, Mr. Arnold, who lived in the house across from mine, I learned that as soon as daylight broke there was activity. Charles and Patricia were the first to arrive, followed closely by Melissa and Junior. They went straight to my bedroom, rummaged through drawers until they found the letter. Mr. Arnold, who pretended to have gone to deliver some bread, reported that he heard shouts of indignation. Of course, the letter I left wasn't quite what they expected. In it, I explained that I had recently changed my will and that all my assets would be donated to the St. Vincent de Paul nursing home, with a small reserve for my funeral expenses. At the end of the letter I had written, "Those who wait for the old man's inheritance end up empty-handed." The most incredible thing was what happened next. Mr. Arnold told me that Even after the news of losing the inheritance, they began dividing up my belongings. Julia was already in the garage, messing with my car. Peter took my TV. Patricia was separating silver cutlery that belonged to my late mother. Charles took my retirement gift watch. Melissa and Junior argued about who would get the living room sofa set. "It's practically new, must be worth about $5,000, Junior said. "But how am I going to take this back to Montana?" Melissa complained. "The house I built with so much love was being looted by my own children, like vultures over a carcass. But I had an ace up my sleeve, something they didn't expect. While they were dividing my possessions, they didn't realize they were being filmed. Before leaving home, I installed small cameras at strategic points in the living room, kitchen, my bedroom and garage. Modern wireless cameras that transmitted everything to Mr. Arnold's cell phone. The technology my grandchildren so often mocked me for not understanding was now working in my favor. Plus, there was the WhatsApp group. The screenshots I took clearly showed they were waiting and even wishing for my death to get their hands on what was mine. Harsh, cruel words written by them, impossible to deny. The next day would be my funeral. Everything organized by them according to municipal procedures. Mr. Paul, my lawyer, was in charge of ensuring everyone was present. He called Charles saying he needed to officially read the will before the burial, as I had requested. I spent that night wide awake, thinking about everything I had lived through, the nights I worked without shelter, the Christmases when I saved all year just to give decent presents, the birthday parties I organized, even when money was tight. And now it all came down to this. A family that was just waiting for my death to divide what I had achieved. The next morning, I put on my best suit, the same one I wore to weddings and graduations. Mrs. Louise helped me with my tie. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a 72-year-old man with deep wrinkles and tired eyes, but still standing, still with dignity. "Are you sure, Mr. Smith?" she asked again. "I've never been more sure in my life, Mrs. Louise. You reap what you sow." The plan was simple. Mr. Paul would pick me up at the nursing home and take me to the chapel, where my body was supposedly being viewed in a closed casket. In reality, there were just some waits to simulate. We would wait for the right moment when everyone was gathered, and then I would make my entrance. We arrived at the cemetery around 10 in the morning. Through the tinted car window, I saw several acquaintances entering the chapel, neighbors, construction friends, even some engineers I had worked with. And, of course, my family. Charles in a dark suit, Patricia all in black, Melissa with sunglasses, Junior looking at his watch as if in a hurry. My grandchildren were also there, Peter on his phone, and Julia talking to a friend, laughing at something. Mr. Paul entered first, greeted everyone, gave his condolences to the family. After a few minutes, he signaled to the driver of the car where I was. It was time. I walked slowly to the entrance of the chapel. From where I stood, I could hear the murmur inside. Mr. Paul had just asked for everyone's attention for the reading of the will. I heard his firm voice. "Before we proceed with the formalities, there's a video that Mr. Smith asked to be shown at this moment." A television had been installed next to the casket. Mr. Paul pressed the remote and the device turned on. On the screen appeared images from the day before. My children and grandchildren invading my house, taking my belongings, arguing about who would get what. I heard exclamations of surprise from those present. Then the screenshots from the WhatsApp group began to appear. The cruel messages, the plans for after my death, the comments about my health, each word magnified on the big screen, impossible to deny. "The old man has uncontrolled diabetes. Doctor said the way he takes care of himself, he won't last 2 years. The house is easily worth $600,000. Divided by 3 children, that's $200,000 each. Grandpa has about $50,000 saved in the bank. I saw the statement the other day. I want his car. It's still new, barely driven. Hope it doesn't take long." The silence in the chapel was absolute. You could hear only some shocked whispers from those present. I saw through the door gap that Charles was pale. Patricia covered her face with her hands. Melissa stared at the floor. The grandchildren looked like they wanted to disappear. It was at this moment that I entered, walking slowly down the center aisle between the benches. At first, no one noticed, all hypnotized by the images on the screen. Then, someone gasped. A lady screamed. Heads began to turn. "Dad!" exclaimed Charles, with eyes wide open, as if he had seen a ghost. And in a way, he had. "Surprise," was all I managed to say in a choked voice. The scene that followed was chaotic. Patricia fainted. Julia began to cry hysterically. Peter dropped his phone on the floor. Melissa was paralyzed, mouth open. Junior stammered something unintelligible. I walked until I was beside my own empty casket. I looked at the shocked faces in front of me. Friends, neighbors, acquaintances, all as surprised as my family, but for different reasons. For them, it was the joy of seeing me. For my family, it was the horror of being exposed. "I wanted to thank everyone for coming to my funeral," I began in a firm voice, "especially my family, who organized everything with such dedication." I paused, looking directly at my children. As you can see, the news of my death was somewhat exaggerated, as were the expectations about my inheritance. Charles stood up, trembling. "Dad, we can explain." "Explain what, son?" "The Grandpa's inheritance group. The messages hoping I would die soon, or perhaps the rush to divide my things before my body even cooled." Patricia, recovered from her fainting, tried to approach. "Mr. Smith, that was just a joke. You misunderstood everything." "A joke? Then let's all laugh together, shall we?" I pointed to the screen, where images of the looting of my house were still playing. "Is this your joke? Dividing the possessions of a man who hasn't even been buried yet? Discussing the value of the house I built with my own hands while you were children? Is that your idea of a joke, Patricia?" Julia, in tears, tried to justify herself. "Grandpa, we didn't mean to..." "Didn't mean to what, Julia? Didn't mean for me to find out, because you made it very clear what you wanted. My car, my house, my money, everything I earned with sweat, with honest work." I looked around at the stunned faces of those present, friends of decades, neighbors who respected me, professional colleagues. I want everyone to know I didn't die, but I discovered who really cares about me and who was just waiting for me to kick the bucket to get their hands on what's mine. I gave another signal to Mr. Paul, who handed an envelope to each of my 3 children. Inside these envelopes is an official document registered with the notary. It's my new will. As you already know from the letter you found, I've left everything to the St. Vincent de Paul nursing home. But there's an addendum. I've also determined that you will no longer be able to enter my house. From today, you are prohibited. If you try, the authorities will be called. Charles opened his mouth to protest, but I raised my hand, interrupting him. I'm not finished. The cameras will remain installed in my house, and the material that everyone just saw will be handed over to the police if any of you try to bother me again. My grandchildren were huddled on the benches, unable to look me in the eye. I felt a pang in my heart. After all, they were young, influenced by their parents, but they were also old enough to know right from wrong. "As for you two," I said, looking at Peter and Julia, "I hope you learn something from all this. Respect isn't bought, it's earned, and family should mean more than a potential inheritance." The reactions were diverse. Some of those present applauded. Others were too shocked to react. My family was in tatters. Charles tried to reach me, begging for a chance to explain, but I was firm. Patricia ran out of the chapel, followed by Julia. Melissa sat crying silently. Junior seemed lost, not knowing what to do. Peter was the only one who came to me, head down, and whispered, "Forgive me, Grandpa," before leaving. When the dust settled, only a few close friends, Mr. Paul and I, remained next to my own empty casket. An image that would certainly stay forever in the memory of everyone who was present. "What now, Mr. Smith?" asked Mr. Arnold, my faithful friend and neighbor. "Now I'm going to live what's left of my life with dignity, Arnold. Without falsehoods, without expectations, only with those who really care." I left the chapel with my head held high under everyone's gaze. Some hugged me, others patted me on the back, murmuring words of support. The news of the dead man who showed up at his own funeral would certainly spread through the city within hours. As I walked through the cemetery toward the car waiting for me, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. A weight I didn't even know I was carrying, that of living to please people who only wanted what I possessed, not who I was. It's been almost 6 months since that day at the cemetery. 6 months of a completely different life than the one I led before. Sometimes when I wake up in the morning and the silence of the house greets me, I still feel a tightness in my chest. Not from regret, but from the harsh reality I had to face at 72 years old. The family I raised with so much love was nothing more than a group of people waiting for my death to divide what was mine. In the first days after the funeral, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. I blocked my children's numbers. Charles still tried to show up at the house a few times, but Mr. Arnold, my faithful guardian, sent him away with the promise of calling the police. Patricia sent messages through mutual acquaintances saying she was very concerned about me. Concerned about the will, that's for sure. Melissa returned to Montana without even trying to speak to me. Junior stayed 2 more days in Springfield. He even left a letter in the mailbox, but I didn't even open it. I threw it away without reading. Words on paper don't erase those I saw in that cursed group. The grandchildren were the only ones for whom my heart still ached. Peter tried to call me several times. One day I answered. He cried a lot, asked for forgiveness. He said he had been influenced by his parents, that he regretted it. I listened in silence. At the end, I only replied, "Forgiveness is earned through actions, not words. Maybe someday." And I hung up. Julia sent a few messages, but without really apologizing, just saying she missed me. Curious how she didn't miss me so much when I was dead, and she was planning to take my car. With time, the contact attempts diminished. Life took its course, and to my surprise it wasn't as lonely as I feared. I discovered true friends, the kind you only get to know in difficult times. Mr. Arnold and Mrs. Clara, my neighbors, started inviting me for Sunday lunches. Dr. Marcus, who helped me with that whole hospital staging, became a close friend. He visits me regularly to check on my health. The diabetes is under control, to the disappointment of my frustrated heirs. At the St. Vincent de Paul nursing home, where I spent those days preparing my resurrection, I made friends with several seniors. I started going there 3 times a week as a volunteer. I help with the building maintenance, fix broken things, do small renovations, my former knowledge finally serving those who truly appreciate it. I also grew close to a lady there, Mrs. Zulmira, a widow like me, with her well-lived 68 years. We started talking, discovered common interests. She was also betrayed by family members and understands my pain. In recent months, we've been going out for coffee in the park, attending Sunday Mass together. Nothing more than a good friendship for now, but it's comforting to have someone who understands what I went through without needing much explanation. As for my assets, I kept my decision. My will remains the same. Everything goes to the nursing home when I'm gone, but while I'm alive, I've been making good use of what I built. I renovated the house, bought new furniture. For the first time in my life, I'm spending a little on myself, without worrying if I'm wasting the children's inheritance. I sold the car that Julia so coveted and bought a simpler, more economical model. With the difference, I took a trip I had always dreamed of. I visited the Southwest. I spent 15 days traveling alone, from Denver to Phoenix. I saw the Grand Canyon, the red rocks of Sedona, the sunset at Monument Valley. I took photos, ate different foods, talked to all kinds of people. It was liberating. One of the biggest changes was in relation to my neighbors. Before, I barely knew them. Just a good morning or good evening when passing by. Now we form a small community. On Fridays, I have a barbecue in the backyard and invite everyone. Mr. Arnold brings non-alcoholic beer for me because of the diabetes. Mrs. Clara makes that homemade potato salad that only she knows how to make. Mr. Takeshi from the corner, whom we call the Japanese, brings a sake that he makes himself. We laugh, tell stories, make plans. That's a word that has regained meaning for me. At 72, when many think there's only waiting for the end, I discovered that I still have a lot to live for, to know, to feel. The most ironic thing is that my health improved. The diabetes is more controlled than ever. The blood pressure normalized. Dr. Marcus jokes that the shock I gave the family rejuvenated me. Maybe he's right. Getting rid of a weight, even if that weight is made of blood ties, does good for the body and soul. In my nightly reflections, sitting on the porch with a cup of chamomile tea, I still wonder where I went wrong. Was I an absent father? Did I work too much and teach too little? Did I give material things when I should have given more attention? These are questions without a right answer. I did the best I could with what I knew at the time. 2 weeks ago, I received an unexpected call. It was Peter, my grandson. He said he had found a job, moved out of his parents' house, was living alone in a small studio apartment. He asked to visit me. I thought a lot before accepting. A grandpa's heart is soft, but experience has taught me to be cautious. He came on a Sunday afternoon, arrived by bus, without that expensive phone he always showed off. He was thinner, with dark circles under his eyes, but there was something different in his gaze, a maturity that wasn't there before. We talked for hours. He told me that after what happened, he had several ugly fights with his parents, that he couldn't live in that environment of falsehood anymore. He decided to leave home, get a real job. He's working as an administrative assistant at a transportation company, becoming a real man, as he put it. I didn't promise anything, didn't fully open the doors, but I said he could come visit me from time to time. I saw a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Maybe, just maybe, all is not lost for the next generation. About Julia, Charles, Patricia, Melissa, and Junior. I have no direct news, but Springfield is a small city. Gossip travels fast. I know that Charles and Patricia separated. It seems greed doesn't keep a couple together indefinitely. Junior returned to Seattle and, as I heard, is having serious financial problems. Melissa continues with her store in Montana. Apparently it's doing well. Julia is dating a rich young man with an imported car. Perhaps she found another inheritance to covet. If I learned anything from all this, it's that family is not just a matter of blood. Family are the people who rejoice in your life, not in your death. They're those who want your well-being, not your assets. They're the ones who build memories with you, not plans for after you're gone. Today I feel I have a new family, not the one I created, but the one I chose, and that chose me. People like Mr. Arnold, Mrs. Clara, Dr. Marcus, Mrs. Zulmira, and so many others who entered my life at this late stage, but brought more sincerity and affection than those I knew for decades. The house I built is still standing, but its meaning has changed. It's no longer a potential inheritance to be disputed, but a home where I welcome those who really matter. The money I saved is no longer a potential inheritance, but a resource to live well the time I have left. And as for that WhatsApp group, well, it still exists somewhere in my email, archived as a reminder of the day I died and was reborn. Not as Joseph, the rich father, the sick grandfather, the old man with his own house, but as Joseph, the man who had the courage to face the truth, however painful it might be, and start over. Life teaches us in strange ways. Sometimes you need to stage your own death to discover who would really cry for you. Sometimes you need to lose one family to find another, better and truer one. If you've made it this far, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like. And if you really followed me to the end of this journey, comment the word rebirth down below. Only those who watched will understand the meaning. Thank you to the Grandpa's Voice channel for this opportunity to share my story. Who knows, maybe the next one will be even more similar to yours. Life has these surprises, some sweet, some bitter, but all teach us something. A tight hug from this old man who learned it's never too late to start over.